Hello, everyone. Oh, let me just make sure that we are live on Instagram. Hold on one second. Okay. Sometimes technology is my friend, sometimes it's not. But hello, everyone. Happy Monday, right? I mean, I don't know how many of you like Mondays, but happy Monday. Tonight, we are doing a very special bonus. If you were at our conference this weekend, our Break into Law School conference, our first annual Break into Law School conference, you know that we had 2 days of panels. We talked about equity in admissions, we talked about branching out to your own law firm, surviving 1L a year, conquering the Lsat, entering academia, the judiciary, climbing the corporate law ladder, and we had a panel specifically on the keys to a successful law school application. Now, I know that there were more people who kind of wanted to hear about law school admissions, and there are more questions that we just could not possibly answer. So first off, I just want to make sure everyone can see me okay. Hello, Sean. Can you see me okay? Can you hear me okay? Want to make sure that I am visible to everyone because tonight I'm just answering your questions. I'm here answering your questions, making sure that, everything is good with your applications this evening. I want to make sure that no matter if you have a big question or a small question, if you have a question about admissions, if you have a question about working with us, that we can answer it. So we have many questions already submitted. The first question is, if you were accepted only into a non-ABA accredited law school thus far, should I wait for an ABA accredited law school to accept me? Should I retake the Lsat to get a higher score? Should I pay my seat deposit for that non-ABA law school and be limited until I could do better? So the way that I would answer this is that there's a reason, right? There's a reason why law schools are ABA accredited. Now, some of those reasons may be flawed, and we can talk a lot about that. But there still are reasons. So what I would want to do, first off, whether a school is ABA accredited or non-ABA accredited, I want you to know the hard numbers. What is their bar passage rate? What is their employment score? What is their median salary? Those are the trifecta numbers that I love because those are the numbers that matter, to be honest. Rankings, okay, who really cares? But do people going to that law school pass the bar? If their bar passage rate is less than 50%, that is problematic. Is their employment score good? Are their students graduating and getting jobs? Because here's the thing, at the end of the day, you are paying money to go to a professional school so you can enter a profession. And it is an investment in your career and your future. And if you're paying money to go to a school where you're just going to end up with debt and no job, that is a problem, right? If you're paying money to go to a school and you're not going to pass the bar because they're not going to prepare you enough to pass the bar, that's a problem, right? That is not a good investment of your dollars. You will have a JD, but you will not be able to practice law. You will not be able to get a job. You might as well have not gone, right? If you're paying money and the median salary is $40,000, I need you to start asking some tough questions like why? Why is your school going to cost me $100,000, but I'm only going to make $40,000 a year? Some of y'all are making more than $40,000 a year now. Real talk, right? Some of you guys are not looking at the median salary and realizing, if I go to this law school and I spend this money, the median, most people actually make less than I make now. That's a problem, right? So you need to, I love you too, Sean. You need to make sure that you are looking at these numbers and making sure that the investment makes sense, right? Make it make sense. Sean, I hope that you're going to join this community because I feel like I have to meet you at this point. You were all up in the conference and we loved it. So those are the things I would look at. Now, if your non-ABA accredited law school does not meet those metrics, right? The bar passage rate is trash. The employment score is trash. The median salary is trash. You should not go. You you should wait. Because the other thing is that, like, maybe that non-ABA accredited law school is really good for the town that you're living in or the state that you're in. But what if you need to move next year or the year after? I mean, life happens, right? Like, I was born in Maryland. I planned to die in Maryland, right? I was like born and raised and died. Okay? Maryland are true and true. But here I am moving to New Jersey next month. Sure. All right. That was not part of the plans. And I don't know where my partner and I will end up being. And it may be Maryland. I hope so. But it may not be Maryland. And so you have to understand that your law degree needs to get you into many spaces and many doors for many years. That's the investment value of it. I know that you want me to pray for an ABA accredited law school to accept you within the next 2 weeks so I can prove that my LSAT score does not and will not define me as a law student or attorney. First off, your LSAT score does not define you as a law student or attorney. It does not. You are more than your LSAT score. That being said, I am going to be praying that an ABA law school accepts you. But if they don't, that is because there's even better blessings waiting for you on the other side of applying in the fall, which is always the best time to apply. Like, maybe God wants to bless you with a scholarship, but like in the fall. His timing is not always our timing. Sometimes I want things, even today, I was like, God, are you trying to teach me the lesson of patience? I think I've learned it. Please, can you give me what I'm asking for? He's like, no, you have not learned patience yet. So here I am, being patient, right? But sometimes he's like, your blessing is like right on the other side. Like, I know you want now, but he's like, no, trust me later. And so that's a hard lesson. So I don't know if that's what he's saying. I'm not God. I'm just saying it's possible. But I'm going to be praying anyways. I'll be praying on it. We had another question that came in. When choosing a law school, how much should we weigh the professors that teach there? And that's a really good question as well. So I don't think you should choose a law school for a particular professor because that professor might be on sabbatical, that professor might leave, that professor's class might just be always full and you never ever get to have that professor. These are real things, right? And these are things that I think sometimes we overlook because we're like, oh, but this professor, I want to work with them. But there really is no guarantee that that professor is going to be at that law school. I think you should look at maybe clinics and programs and things that are likely to still be there when you get there. But the fact that there is a certain professor that you really want to work with should maybe at the end of your process, if you're like really between two schools and you've now had a conversation with this professor and this professor will absolutely be there and this professor's like, man, I can't wait. You can be my research assistant and everything else is equal. The money is equal. The opportunities from that school is equal. And there's a professor that you love that's like, yeah, you can be a research assistant. Okay, that's great. But at the beginning, right now, I think it's not something that I would weigh very heavily. It can be part of your research and hopefully the professor being there means that they have an entire program around what you're looking for, which, can definitely influence the schools on your list. But you just want to make sure that you're remembering that people oftentimes leave. They leave. Tenured professors are flaky. And I can tell you that Harvard had 8 Black tenured professors when I was there, and I had one class. I had one class with a Black professor. One. My 3rd year. Because they were full. Critical race theory, I don't know what you had to do to get into critical race theory. Wake up at the crack of dawn, pay somebody, know someone at the registrar's office. That class was packed all the time. Every semester, packed. Right? So there are some classes, it's man, that would have been really dope. I was at the school with that professor and that would have been cool. But also, I didn't get to take that class. So it's sad. And if that had been my only reason for going to this law school, that would have been devastating. Similarly, though, you don't want to avoid a law school for a particular professor. I know that wasn't the question asked. But I will say she's still there. A highly problematic child advocacy professor at Harvard. She's real problematic, y'all. Names will not be named, but she is the worst and real racist. And, I really wanted to do child advocacy, but I really did not want to work with this professor. And the school actually found a way. We found a little, like a little dodge because it was actually a common request. So I would say, like, don't go to a school just for one professor, but also don't let one professor ruin your desire to go to that school. Okay. I just want to do one more check that, like, on LinkedIn and YouTube, like, I'm moving, you can see me, I'm not frozen, all looks good. Just gonna do one more check just to make sure. We have another question, which is kind of, similar to what I just started talking about. And you guys can put questions in the chat. You can put questions in the comments. Like, I'm here for y'all. Whatever questions you have. There's a person that asks, what's the correlation between bar passage and being a good law school? I'm unfamiliar with the bar exam, so I always assumed that folks mostly have to self-study for that, and sometimes have a difficult time passing regardless of what school they attend. Ooh, this is a good question. Because Harvard helped us none. But, we still have a high bar passage rate. Well, let me not say they helped us none. The bar, I have so many thoughts about the just stupidity of the bar exam, but I digress. The bar actually tests you on your first year law school concepts. Why do you take the bar after your third year then? I don't know. But all of the classes that you take in your very first year are the classes that are going to show up on your bar exam, plus maybe some additional classes depending on, I don't know, like what state you're in, or if it's a multi-state. Like, Maryland had like family law and securities and commercial papers. It's just so random. But then like the main test is like on torts, like the multiple choice section, the MBE as it's called, multi-state bar exam, that multiple choice section is the same, and it's on like torts and criminal law and constitution law and property and civil procedure and contracts, and I really can't remember what else because I've probably like mentally blocked it out because it was such a traumatic experience. I passed the bar the first time, but if I hadn't passed the bar that first time, I don't know if I was going to take it a second time. It was real trying, guys. But so there are these like, main canonical parts of the bar exam that you learn your first year. So yes, you do need to study exclusively for the bar exam. If you're going to a big law, or, a big law firm, they will usually pay for your bar prep. If you are doing public interest, sometimes the bar preps like Barbary and Themis will give you a discount. If you are smart like me, you will go to law school and the first thing you will do is you will sign up to be a bar prep rep. Yes, you will. Why? Because you will get the course for free. I mean, if you're going to big law and corporate law is your jam, then just like don't. But if you were like me and you knew you were not going to big law and you knew you also did not have $4,500 for bar prep on top of the $1,100 it costs to take the bar, on top of the fact that you can't work that summer because you're studying 8 hours a day, then you will be like me and you will all become bar reps. I was a Barbary rep. Shout out Barbary. All right. Once a month on Wednesdays, I tabled. I gave people free Barbary books and I asked them if they had signed up for the bar. Once a month for 3 years. That's okay. It was totally worth it. 100%. I would do it again. Okay. So there's many different ways to get your bar prep paid for. I know this because a black girl who went to Princeton, like my first week at Harvard, she was like, you need to be a Barbary rep. And I was like, word, right? I wouldn't have known about it otherwise. But, so you do study for the bar pretty heavily. Where that bar passage rate comes in is that if you don't learn your first year concepts well, like you're already going to sort of forget some of them. And truthfully, I learned during bar prep that I don't think I learned property the first time. I'm not really sure I learned property during bar prep, but I passed. So, I learned something. But if you really don't have a foundational understanding of property, torts, civ pro, con law, crim law, courts, like if you don't have a foundational knowledge because your law school did not teach it well, it will be very hard for you to learn it during bar prep, because bar prep is like 2 months. right, is like not very long when you really think about it. And the bar is mostly memorization, which is so stupid, but whatever. It is just mostly memorization. So it's really hard to both memorize like the entire, like all the laws, right? And learn it for the first time because you didn't learn it well because your school didn't teach it well. And I think that's where the bar passage rate correlation comes from. There are some schools that actually have additional bar prep classes built into their school. So like your third year, you can take a bar prep class. I don't really think Harvard had that, but I know that there are lots of schools that do. And so I think that's smart, and most schools should have that, right? But, you know, if a school has a really low bar pass rate, like, yes, some amount of people will not pass the bar the first time because it's a hard test, right? So, you know, 90% pass rate, great, really great. 80% pass rate, honestly, still fine. 70% pass rate, okay, it's okay, right? But then when you start getting to like 60, 50, that means 1 in 2 students are not passing the bar. That is more than just, it's a hard test and some of the people didn't really do well. That points to more of a fundamental misunderstanding of the concepts. That means that the school really should be doing more to make sure that their students pass the bar. That is actually one of the reasons why schools lose their ABA accreditation. If their bar passage rate is consistently low, then they are not a good school to prepare the next generation of attorneys, and they lose their accreditation because they are not teaching you what you need in order to pass this bar, in order to practice. Y'all are going to law school to become lawyers. No one's going to law school just to get 2 extra letters on the name. Everyone's going to law school to become lawyers in some way, shape, or form. If the school does not prepare you to be a lawyer, it is not the school for you. That's just it. So if you can't pass the bar, you were sold a lemon. You know, it's like buying a car. You're like, I'm going to go on a road trip. And the salesman's like, okay, here's a car. But like, he knows the car is only going to get you, 50 miles. And you're trying to go like, 400 miles. You're like, what the heck? I told you I needed to go all the way to, Connecticut or whatever. And it's like, well, this car will only get you to Virginia or, Delaware or whatever. You understand what I'm saying, right? Like you would feel upset. You would be like, but I just spent money on this car and you knew that I needed to go on a road trip. Why would you sell me a car that will only get me to the next state over? Like, why would you do that? That's basically like law schools that are not preparing students to pass the bar. It's like, you want to get all the way to practice. And they know they cannot get you there. They can get you to graduation. You don't want to do that. That would aggravate pretty much everyone, right? Because you can't really get your money back either. Like a used car, you can maybe be like, dude, give me my money back. But you can't. That's not how school works. So hopefully that helped. Okay, so there's a question. How do you check to see what you did wrong with your Lsat so as not to repeat those same mistakes? So full disclosure, I am not an Lsat tutor. We do not do Lsat prep. However, I think that depending on what test prep you're using, they usually give like some answer explanations to kind of help you see what you did wrong. That is definitely a better question for an LSAT prep tutor that they can probably, like most reputable tutors can like look and see where your mistakes are and what you're doing wrong. Even some diagnostic exams, I think, can have like some breakdown. And so I would say reach out. We have like LSAT Lab, LSAT Demon, Mina Perrone at Logic Games Pro, Jasmine at Tutoring by Jasmine, which is just jasmine.com. So I'd definitely reach out to them. And they were at the conference. So if you didn't catch their Conquering the LSAT panel, you should. Can you transfer from a non-ABA accredited law school to an ABA accredited law school? It will be very difficult. Like super difficult. So transferring as a whole is actually much harder than people imagine. People are like, I'll just transfer. But your JD1 GPA is really important. So if you have like a really high top 10% JD1 GPA at a non-accredited ABA law school, then probably you will be able to transfer to an ABA accredited law school. Now, which one is really unclear, right? Just because it's ABA still doesn't mean it's a good school. There are some questionable ABA law schools. There's a whole ranking, right? But you should be able to make a transfer to an ABA accredited law school. But you want to make sure also that you're just making a smart investment. Not every school gives merit aid to transfer students, or the financial aid package looks very different. But transferring is also like, it comes quickly, like so quickly. Like basically, you get your final grades in June or like end of May, like really June. And like transfer applications are usually due like July 1. So real quick, y'all. And it really is like based on your first year grades, which is good if some of you are much better at school than you are at like the Lsat exam. But sometimes your first year grades don't also go the way that you want them to, and so there's that. Oh, okay. So the question was actually, how do you, not your Lsat pack, your admissions. Like, how do you check to see what's wrong with your admissions so as not to repeat those mistakes? Like, how do you get feedback from law schools that you've applied to but were denied or waitlisted? Most law schools will not actually give you that kind of detailed feedback. They just can't. Some of them just won't, but most of them just can't. They're really small teams. Like, there's usually between 4 and 6 people who work in law school admissions to read like the thousands of applications that they get. So they usually don't have the capacity to give that kind of individual feedback. But that is something that if you're working with a consultant, like if you were working with us, for example, we could take a look at your application and probably tell you like what went kind of sideways, what you could strengthen, how you could avoid those mistakes for the future. But that is not usually something that a school has the capacity to do. And then there's a question, is graduating from law school debt-free possible? Absolutely. It is totally possible. But a lot of it is like that prep work. So there's like 2 different ways to get scholarships. Well, there's like 3 different ways. So the first is probably the way that you guys are most familiar with it, which is, just merit scholarships because your LSAT and your GPA are above the medians. LSAT Demon has a really cool scholarship estimator that you can look at as well. And then if you just get so 31% of our students get a full tuition scholarship to law school, right? 66% of our students get at least a half tuition scholarship to law school, which is, like a lot of our students. So, but 31% of our students get at least a full tuition scholarship, and you can get full tuition, you can get full tuition plus stipend, right? And so like there are definitely ways for you to go to law school debt free, even if you don't happen to get that full tuition scholarship. You could keep applying for kind of like follow-up funding, like follow-up scholarships. There's scholarships for continuing law school students. And so maybe you have like a $20,000 gap where you can like work really hard to try to get a fellowship to bridge that. You can also, depending on your school, depending on like what kind of job you want to go into, you can do like a loan repayment assistance program. So that's what I was on at Harvard. So when I graduated, they actually sent me a check for my loans. So I didn't really so it's not really debt free because I had loans, but like they were paying it. So like there are just some options there. All right, we have a question on Instagram. What is the most for stipends you have ever heard students receive? Oh, I don't know that I have a number. I mean, usually they range somewhere between maybe $5,000 and $20,000 a year. I would say probably in that $15,000 to $20,000 range would be the most that I've really heard for stipends, because that money is supposed to cover just like your personal costs, like your personal allowance, which you would use for rent or food or any of that kind of stuff. And then we have a really nice shout out from Kelly Bridges. I just wanted to say the conference was such a blessing. I met so many amazing people and received great information from the panelists. Shout out to Miss Pat. You're going to be a great family law asset. Miss Pat was the bomb, y'all. If y'all were not at this conference and you did not meet Miss Pat was amazing. And Miss Pat is a testimony that anyone can go to law school because she is she is 65 and like loving life, and I love that. Like, so many people have come to me and they were like, yeah, like I'm 30. I mean, I think I'm too old to go to law school. And I'm like, y'all don't even know. Y'all don't even know. All right. There are 65-year-olds out here. That means you are not even too old. You are like young. You're like a spring chicken. But seriously, we have helped students of all ages. We have helped moms. We've helped single moms. We have helped senior citizens. We have helped military vets. We have helped second career people. Like, you are certainly not, I don't know what age you are, but whatever it is you're listening, you are not too old to go to law school. Okay? You're not. Maybe if you were like 90. Like, maybe, but like, I don't know. I don't know. But like most of you, you're not too old to go to law school. We have a great question from LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much for the conference this weekend. It was fantastic and so informative. I've been considering making some campus visits while things slow down at work during the summer. But is it worthwhile when students aren't on campus, though there are still admissions officers to build relationships with? Of course. I love this question because it really touches on like some of my favorite topics, and those topics are like making connections with admissions, because you really do need to. I think that there's this misconception that they don't really care about meeting you, that it's just your scores, that you're just on paper. But I always tell students, especially students of color, underrepresented students, like, you should take every advantage to put a name and a face with a name, right? A face with the paper. So that they'll be like, when they read it, they'll be like, oh, I met him. He was so lovely. So going to things like LSAC fairs and any information sessions that they have on campus, I think would be really helpful. There are lots of actually probably more effective ways of interacting with students on campus, or interacting with students rather than going on campus. I say this mostly because I think a lot of law school students during the school year are like really stressed and like not like, like if they're on campus, they're like trying to do work. Like, we have fun off campus, but if they're like on campus, they're like going to class, they're like studying. It's like a little bit harder to like connect. But most of the student groups do have like an Instagram, right? So they have ways for you to reach out, whether that's the Black Law Students Association or the Women Law Association or the Muslim Students Association or the Christian Faith, whatever it is. Honestly, there's an association for you. And usually they have an Instagram where you can like DM them, or they have an email or specific outreach. Those are kind of better ways to get in contact with them, and maybe even seeing if you can, like, if they have a virtual meeting, if you can drop in or whatever. But those are kind of a little bit better ways to make more genuine connections with students than I think just popping up on campus. It's just, like, from what I remember being in school, it's probably a little precarious. Because, when I was at school, I was like, I had things to do and until I got home. It's not exactly like college because like most people live off campus. So like going to school was like because I needed to be doing something important. But I think making connections with admissions while you go to visit is great. And more specifically, if you do get this like why the school essay, you can be like, well, last summer I visited, and you have like actual things to say. Because so often the biggest mistake with that essay is that students just write what's on the website, which they know what's on the website. Please don't tell them what's on the website. Or they write it so generic that it could be like any school, right? They hate that too. They can tell when you're just upcycling an essay from one school to another. Like, they can tell. I can tell. They can tell. Okay? So, like, the best why this school essays are really specific. When you have that personal connection, it's like dating. Like, I want to feel like you really want me, And if I don't feel like you really want me, then I don't want you. Okay? It's like, I need reciprocal love. And that's why this essay is, right? So if you're like, I took the time to go visit last summer, then I'm like, oh. It's like you saying you bought me flowers. Like, oh, maybe you buy everyone flowers, but I still feel special. Okay. That's kind of like visiting, right? They're like, okay, well, she actually cares a little bit. He cares a little bit, right? So I think that it's definitely worthwhile. Would you recommend going part-time for the first semester to get in and then go full-time after you have become acclimated? I would not, because one, it's not guaranteed that you can switch from part-time to full-time. there are different programs. And you've gotten accepted into the part-time program, so you can't just decide whenever you want that you're now going to be in the full-time program. That's like not how it works. Part-time students also usually finish in 4 years. So there's sometimes a mismatch, depends on the school, but sometimes there's a mismatch between what you've taken as a part-time student and what people have taken as a full-time student. And so that prevents you from making the switch as easily because you're behind. Now, people do switch from part-time to full-time, usually maybe after that first year. And sometimes they will take some classes over the summer to get them caught up for that full-time switch for their 2L year. But you will have really missed a lot of that 1L cohort bonding, which is so important. I love my section mates. They are like everything, and like, we went through 1L together, so it was like bonding because 1L is 1L, so like we went through it. So when you do switch from part-time to full-time, because you're gonna have your own part-time cohort, right? Like you're gonna also go through it with people, but in a part-time program, so you will be, it's almost like thinking of transferring even though you're in the same school. But that's how you should look at it, right? It's kind of different people, a different cohort, different experience. And so I wouldn't recommend trying to like think I'm going to go part-time so that I'll get used to law school and then I will like go full-time, because it will actually be more difficult. I think it's Kahari. I think that's how you say your name. I so appreciate you too. I'm glad my answer was helpful. Okay, Mariah, I'm not sure. Asked, do I have any predictions for the upcoming cycle? Ooh, that's a good question. Well, every year, LSAC changes the LSAT exam. This year is no different. So I predict we will continue to see variability in the scores. I just want 1 year where the test is the same. Just one. It's just, I don't know why we have to keep changing things. But I know that they're testing out a new section for the logic games. They're just trying to see what it does. So it's a little unclear how that's going to affect the general score distribution. I mean, it's an unscored experimental section, but that means that some people are only really taking 3 tests. There's a lot of variability that goes into it. I'm not a statistician, but I will say that if we look at just the admissions landscape, although, okay, I have a lot of thoughts. I may change my thoughts. So for any of you watching now, if you like hear me give thoughts on the cycle like 3 months from now, like just, it might change. We are currently in an economic downturn. Again. Sad. Usually in economic downturns, applications to law schools go up. That's what we saw in 2020, right? When the world becomes more unstable, people tend to go, like graduate applications as a whole rose 7%. About 20% in business school applications went up 35% in 2020, the 2020 to 2021 cycle, right? Now, applications were down from that last cycle, still more competitive than the 2019-2020 pre-pandemic cycle, but nothing compared to the 2020-2021 cycle. There are a lot of things, that just happened, right? The Supreme Court just did what the Supreme Court did. There's a lot I could say, but the Supreme Court did what the Supreme Court just did, which has people fired up on both sides, right? So, if you're like, yay, then you're like, time to be a reproductive rights lawyer and keep the fight going. If you're like, no, time to be a reproductive rights lawyer and, fix it. So we may see an increase with that because typically when there is a political something, like there was the Trump bump, as people called it, when Trump got elected, and people were like, hold up, let me go to law school. And then in 2020, there was Black Lives Matter and other civil unrest, and people were like, what you mean? And Amy Coney Barrett got on the bench, and people were like, where law school at, right? And we're having this inflation, and we're having this economic crash, and so before before this weekend or this week with the Supreme Court. I would have said that we should expect to see applications lower than last year, but probably still a little higher than 2019, 2020. I would have said that this will be a slightly less competitive cycle. That's what I would have said. I think it's a little too early to tell the effect of the Supreme Court ruling, but I think it will have an effect on law school applications this cycle. I would be interested to see if it didn't, but I think it's quite possible. Again, I could change my mind in 3 months, so, don't quote me. But I think it's quite possible that we will see an increase in applications this year because of both the continuing economic downturn, which always drives applications to law school, because people see the law as a stable career. When people lose their job, when people are not sure about their job future, lawyers basically always have a job. Like literally, you can always get a job somewhere as well. You can be your own job, right? And so when the economics of the country look kind of sideways, people are like, well, let me go get this law degree. The other thing is when people can't actually afford their bills, going to law school and or graduate school as a whole and being able to borrow for your living expenses with student loans actually is a way that people kind of ride a negative economic situation in their own life because you're kind of protected in a grad school bubble. I wouldn't have said that the economy as a whole, just by itself, even though we are in this place, would have caused law school's applications to rise, because to be honest, the economy has not really ever recovered from the pandemic. It's not like we experienced a whole year of bliss before this. It's just it went from bad to worse, truly. So I wouldn't have said that would have actually caused a spike, but I am interested to see the effect of the Supreme Court situation. And I suspect that it will have an effect on law school applications this cycle. Will it get all the way to 2020-21 levels? I don't think so, because I think the pandemic just laid a whole bunch of people off, and people were like, well, I guess it's time to study for the Lsat since I have no job, right? So I don't think we're going to go back to 2020-21 levels, but we may match last year. So it might not be as cool as, or it might not have the cooling effect that I thought we would have just because of the Supreme Court situation. But I could be wrong. Totally could be wrong. So we'll see in 3 months. We will see. We will really see. I think that schools will continue to use their wait lists like it's their job, though. It is their job, but I think they will really be waitlisting people. Again, this year, we've seen lots of wait lists. They didn't waitlist enough people in 2020-21. They learned from that, and they basically listed everyone in 2021-22 as one of the slowest cycles in ABA history. So yeah, I think we're going to see some of that same conservative behavior from law schools, definitely. So I'll be applying soon using Logic Games Pro because of your videos. I'll make sure to see you for my essays. I love it. I'm excited to see you. I'm excited to work with you on your essays. We love essays. Cannot speak about the Lsats, but we do love them essays. All right, what other questions do you guys have? Let me see what else I have that was here. Okay. So there is a question, I see it, Jada, about payments. We do have payment plans. Email me and we will discuss more in detail, but we do have payment plans on all of our products, whether it's private consulting, whether it's boot camp. We were running a special this past weekend where we were giving we were giving $500 off of our boot camps and our private packages with payment plans, and $1,000 off our private packages if you pay in full. I think I'm gonna go ahead and extend it, through tomorrow night. So if you were one of those people that were like, oh my God, I really wanted to do this, but I couldn't get it together this weekend. If you're listening to the live, I'm not emailing it out. You have to come to the live to know things. If you are interested in taking $500 off the boot camp, $500 off the private packages, $1,000 off the private packages if you're paying in full, email us at hello@smontgomeryconsulting.com. I will get you that code. And it's the same code. But we'll make sure that it's like turned on for you. It's, 500 BILS to get 500 off for the boot camps and the payment plans for the packages, and 1,000 BILS for 1,000 off the private packages if you're paying in full. But Jada, email me and I will absolutely talk to you about that. And you have a prayer request as well, and I see that prayer request and I stand in agreement with it. Let's see what other questions we have. It's almost the top of the hour, so if you guys don't have more questions, I may pray us out soon. But I want to make sure that I've gotten to every single question that people had, because that's kind of what I'm here for. There was a question that says, can I get into law school with an online undergraduate degree as long as it's from an accredited institution, good stats, and high Lsat score? You absolutely can get into law school. The question is always which law school. And you just want to present. It's just about your essays. And if you have good stats and high Lsat score and you have strong letters of recommendation, then you should be fine, right? I think the question is always what was the rigor at your undergraduate institution? That's always going to be their question. It's not really, even at Harvard, most of the people did not come from an elite institution. Actually, most people came from public schools or state schools and that kind of stuff. And so it's not they're not going to immediately reject it, but they are just going to have questions about the academic rigor and that kind of thing. All right, there's a question from Instagram. Biggest mistakes you see with writing personal statements and diversity statements, etc. Whew, this is a good question. Ooh, I love this question. Biggest mistakes I see with personal statements. So many. Centering someone else and not yourself. When I read a personal statement that is half about your grandma and what she went through to get to this country and not you, I am I can't admit your grandmother. Your grandmother is not applying to law school right now. I hate, hate's a strong word, but I don't think it serves us well to center trauma either, or one negative experience. So sometimes, let's say it's a person that wants to go into criminal law. They will write the whole paper almost, like a page and a half about this one incident and how this one incident really just shaped their whole view. And then they're and then I'm going to go to law school. I didn't really learn what I needed to learn about you in your personal statement, though. And it's such a missed opportunity. So we start with a very large universal brainstorm, and we make sure that you're weaving in multiple stories. It's kind of the crux of, a good personal statement is that it moves in time and space, right? Movement. If you're telling me, I love using animal law as an example. If you're telling me that you're passionate about animal law, I would love to see 2 or 3 examples, ideally with some narrative detail and narrative storytelling, because as humans, narration is what really makes us connect to what we're reading. And so that's a skill, right? Evocative narrative writing. But ideally 2 or 3 stories with this evocative narrative writing with strong transitions that move me through the development of your passion, so that by the time I get to the end of your personal statement, I'm duh, she has to go to law school and she's really passionate about animal law. I feel it. I am convinced. I think you need to look at your personal statement like your very first case as a lawyer. Have you convinced me that you are serious about this, that you have thought about it, that you're focused, that you're going to, accomplish things, and that you know why you want to go to law school? And, there's a lot of chatter oh, but, I don't know what I want to do, or I'm not really sure, or do I need to know what I want to do? My answer is yes, take some time to figure it out. Now, people will say that your personal statement does not need to talk about why you want to go to law school or what kind of law you want to practice. And, it doesn't have to. It doesn't. But the way that we teach personal statements here, it does. Why? Because I know that is the safe method that works. Right? It's I don't know how many of you guys are, I also do college admissions, right, with children. It's a fascinating time. And every so often a child wants to bring me a poem. And they're well, I read online, College Confidential, that this person wrote a haiku and got into Yale. So here's my haiku. I'm that can work like 1 out of 100 times. Like 99 times, admissions is just going to be like, why did you write me a freaking poem? Like it's not going to work for most of the times. So like I like to teach conservatively. What will work is a strong essay that ties together your reasons for why you want to go to law school, ideally an area, and a couple of stories and moments that really show me the development of that passion. So, biggest mistakes are when students just totally miss that. Or like I get to the end and I have no idea why you want to go to law school. I have no idea what you want to do. My biggest pet peeve is when people say they want to be a voice for the voiceless. If I had $1 for every time someone told me they wanted to be a voice for the voiceless, I would be very, very rich. Don't say that, right? And don't just center it on I'm going to law school because I want to help underrepresented or marginalized folks. Because my answer to that is going to law school is not the only way to do that. You can go and get a master in public health. You can get a master's in education. You can become a social worker. You can do a lot of things if you want to help underrepresented communities. I need to know why you want to go to law school. And some of you don't know that, and you need to figure it out. And you want to make sure that you are understanding that, like, you can make so much change without being a lawyer. So I need your personal statement to make sure that you know why you want to be a lawyer. And that's really important. In terms of diversity statements, and I'm going to blend this with a question that I see about the preferred length, the diversity statement is 1 page double-spaced. So about 3 paragraphs is correct. I need to know what your diversity is, ideally in the first paragraph, and like how an evocative narrative moment about how it shaped you and affected you, and like how this has given you a different perspective. Now, your diversity statement, I always say it doesn't have to be about socioeconomics, race, gender, culture. It could be anything, right? It could be any unique experience. And I think people really put themselves in a box with the diversity statement. But a diversity statement that only tells me the bad and doesn't tell me like how this has like shaped you or how it's shaped how you think about the world, it just misses the mark. That actually goes back to another personal statement pet peeve. So often we want to center trauma or a negative thing that has brought us to law school, but we don't take time to talk about our strengths and how we've made impact and what we've done already. And I think that's a missed opportunity. Because you are a multifaceted person, you should not reduce yourself to a single story narrative, but you also have strengths and accomplishments and you've made impact, and that's why you really need to focus also on those things. But a diversity statement should, tell me, I should know what your diversity statement is, what you're talking about at the beginning. Sometimes people just want to use it to talk about systemic racism, which is like not necessarily a great use of the diversity statement. Obviously, I want to dismantle systemic racism, especially in education. The diversity statement, though, I need to know nuance, right? Like, what is it that about you? I didn't even talk about race in my diversity statement. I talked about faith, and I talked about like a family incident and like that really shook my faith and how I like really had to reshape it and rethought how I viewed the world, but it made me see the world in more shades of gray. Right. And so there's this moment, there's this diverse experience, there's how it's impacted you and how it's like now, allowed you to have this different perspective that maybe someone else hasn't had, or just that's shaped how you view the world. And that's like the most important thing. What advice would you give to someone with a low GPA looking to apply this upcoming cycle? Listen, you guys know I say that there are 3 things you absolutely have control over: timing, writing, and your letters of recommendation. I did not say GPA. So if you have a low GPA, there are 2 things that you should do. One, you should make sure that you have a strong addenda, because I'm sure there's probably a reason for your low GPA. Now, maybe it's just like, I was just partying. Well, I don't know about that one. But like, if it's like, there was a semester where I had to take care of my parents, or I was working 2 jobs, or I had a mental health reason, or I switched majors, whatever it is, right? If there's a reason for whatever your low GPA is, you should definitely explain it in addendum. And addendum is really short, like 3 to 4 sentences. Like, is not long, guys. It's not an essay. So 1, you want to make sure that you have that addenda. 2, actually, there's 3 things you can do. 2, if it's possible to get a letter of recommendation from your undergrad institution, that will help, right? If you have a low GPA, you have a reason for it in your addenda, and you have professors from that school saying, no, actually, she was a really good student, that will really help. And the third thing you can do, okay, there's 4. I'm really bad at counting. The third thing that you can do is, of course, try to maximize your LSAT score, right? Because maybe your LSAT score will be a better representative of who you are now than your GPA was then, right? And now you've had this like explanation, you have these professors, and then you want to maybe get, your LSAT score and all that kind of stuff. So now you're painting a really nice picture. But the fifth thing is also maximizing your essays. I always say you have 100% control over your writing. You don't really have 100% control over a lot of things in this process, but you have 100% control over your writing. And so you want to make sure that all of your essays are as strong as possible, and you want to apply in the fall. If you are someone applying below the medians, you want to apply in the fall. You don't want to apply later in the cycle because you will probably not get in. So you want to apply earlier in the cycle, and that's how you are able to do that. A lot of our students apply below the median. Like most of my students apply below the median. But, 54% of my students have gotten into a top 14 school if they applied, right? So it's more than 1 and 2 basically. But we apply in the fall. It's so important. Timing is so important. And we have strong essays and strong addenda and strong letters of record. So you do what you can. Like, yes, your GPA, it is what it is. But you cannot let that define you. You have to make sure that you're working around and controlling what you can control. Yes, Sean, actually, this is on my YouTube channel. So all my lives are just kind of saved on my YouTube channel. So you can definitely find it there. Okay, I'm going to look to see what other questions we have. Hopefully this is helpful to you guys. I just, wanted to make sure that you had, an opportunity to ask a little bit more questions. And make sure that I also told you guys that I was extending the sale just for everyone that's on this live. So email me, hello@smontgomeryconsulting.com. I will make sure that you get hooked up. Those are good through this week. That's $500 off the private consulting, $500 off the boot camp, $1,000 off the private consulting if you pay in full. We also have quick start essay plans. And if you registered for the conference in your email, you got a code for the first month free of any of our Kickstart essay plans. Those plans start at $20 a month, y'all. It gives you access to our library of courses. You get discounts on certain essay editing plans. Our writing software launches next month, so you got access to that. So, we got things for the folks. Things for the folks. Okay, I don't see any other questions, so I think I'm going to pray us out unless there is a question. I'm going to give it like 1 extra minute. Okay. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this time. Thank you for allowing us to have this bonus Q&A, and for allowing me to be here and be used by you and be a blessing for others. I pray a special blessing over everyone in their application cycle. I'm praying for acceptances into ABA law schools. I'm praying over your word. I'm praying over Matthew 6:9-13. I'm praying for faithfulness and for steadfastness. I'm praying that you would just continue to be with us in this journey that is about to be a little hard, but we know that we're not in it alone because you are always here. Your word says that you have taken us by the right hand and that you will never leave us, and that we should not be afraid because you are with us. And so I just ask that you would remind us that you have already grasped our right hand, that you have covered it, that you've covered our journey. You say, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you. And I know that you have plans for us and for our life and for our calling, and that your timing is perfect and divine, and it might not be our timing and it might not be our plan, but I ask that you would give us faith and trust and hope that if we just continue to trust you, you will make that plan clear to us, and it will be so much bigger and greater than we could have imagined. I just thank you for this space, for this ability to be here tonight. I just pray that everyone stays safe as we go into the rest of the summer, and that you help them stay encouraged throughout this process. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. So guys, thank you. Real quick, that question that was asked on Instagram, you should waive your right to view your letters of recommendation because it gives them more faith in the fact that your letters of recommendation are more candid. But we can talk more offline about that too. If you have any questions, just email me at hello@smontgomeryconsulting.com. Thank you guys for everything. Thank you for coming to the conference. Thank you for being in our community. Definitely join the Barrier Breakers Facebook group. Yes, I go live every Friday at noon Eastern. Sometimes it's a team member. But I go live every Friday at noon Eastern. And so you can see it there on our YouTube channel. You can also see all of our old lives. Our podcast episodes come out every Wednesday. That's Break Into Law School. And so this was like a special bonus live, but we go live on Fridays. Unless it's a holiday or I could not deal with last Friday with the Supreme Court, so I did not go live. But we usually go live on Fridays at noon Eastern. You can always submit questions to be answered at bit.ly/breakintolawschool. Even if you can't attend live, I will answer that and it'll make its way onto the podcast. And maybe this will make its way onto the podcast as well too. But thank you guys. I love you. I'm praying for you. I hope that your law school application journey is blessed. If we can be helpful, please reach out to me. I would love to work with you. I'd love to get to know you a little bit more, and our team. And we can't wait for the impact you're going to make on the legal community. Bye guys.